Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm just going to continue from where I left off. Anyway, go ahead and open up your browser. Type in, well, let's just see what the IP address is. ifconfig. Excellent, so this is my IP address. Go ahead and copy it. Yours will perhaps be different or something of a kind, doesn't really matter. Just go ahead and copy it. Control V into the URL field of your browser, paste it there, go ahead and open up your folder, and immediately we encounter a problem here. We need a username and a password. Go ahead and open up your terminal. These things are stored by default in your installation files, so go ahead, actually they're in the readme file, so in the instruction set, go ahead and type in cd var www dv wa ls, where is it? There we go, there's a readme file. So let's just go ahead and open up the readme file, and you have a lot of explanations here. Feel free to go ahead and read through them. Well, actually there aren't that much of it, but there are some useful things. So it says default username is admin and default password is password. There is an installation video as well. I mean, I've already showed it to you, but you can go ahead and feel free to watch this version of it as well. I don't think that you'll see anything extremely different, but they use XAMPP to actually run the damn vulnerable application. I use a different type here, but it doesn't really matter. You can use the one that I am using, the one that comes as a default with Kali Linux operating system. Anyway, as I said, feel free to check the link out, but we've mainly opened this file to see the username and password, and the username is admin, password is password. Feel free to change that later on, or don't, doesn't really matter, since you are the only person using this virtual machine. If this is your physical machine, it would be a good idea to actually change it. So, admin, and down here I'm gonna go ahead and write password. But since you are using a bridged adapter in VirtualBox, perhaps it would be a good idea to change it indeed. But for the time being, let's just go ahead and see what's up for the offer here. So you have a lot of these types of attacks. You have brute force, command execution, cross-site request forgery, SQL injection, file inclusion, etc. There are a lot of them. I will go through some of them, but down below I won't go through all of them obviously, but I will go through some, as I said, through a significant amount anyway. And down below you have DVWA security, so go ahead and click on that. You are able to set your security level of this web application in general, so it can be low, medium, or high. I would recommend that you go with high, primarily because that's going to reflect the real-time circumstances to the greatest degree. If you go with low, pretty much everything you do, it's going to fly, which is not the case in the real world. Anyway, now that it is set in high, click on submit to remember changes, and go ahead and click on SQL injection blind. Now, this is where usually people type these things in, and you might think, oh well, that's not the case in the real world. We don't have a neat, clear field where we can type the things in. But keep in mind, this is just for your convenience. This is just for convenience sake. So if I just click on empty submit, you can see up here in the URL section there it says ID equals, and then there is nothing there. So whatever I would type in here would basically be set to ID equals. Let's type in 3333, submit. There you go. It says ID equals 3333. So in the real world, you would be typing these things up here in the ID section or something of a kind, while here they've just constructed a neat field where you can type these things in. As I said, doesn't really matter. All the things that you type in here in the user ID field, you can also type in here in the URL, and the effect will be exactly the same. There is literally no difference of whatsoever. Anyway, now that we have our security parameters set up and that the environment is set up, that we've managed to log into it, let's go ahead and start up Burp Suite. Why do we need Burp Suite? Burp Suite will create a proxy for us. We need it in order to capture some of the information. Primarily, we need to capture the session cookie so that we can use it later on with the SQL map, primarily because we have actually logged into a website, and we need to enable our SQL map to actually request a field and go past the authentication with the session ID cookie. This is also a good method, primarily because most of the sites out there will allow you to create some sort of a basic user, and at the registration site, at the main login site, there are countless countermeasures. There are intrusion detection systems. If they see that something is up, the red flags will be raised, your IP will be banned, and then you will need to change the IP. A ton load of things will be there. Almost all the security systems will be focused primarily on that login page, and that can be a problem. But if you manage to create even a regular user, any kind of user, if you just type in some credentials there, whatever, log in, then suddenly on a lot of sites, and this is a really bad thing for a lot of websites out there, a lot of these systems tend to simply disappear. All the fields past the authentication or any authentication are pretty much neglected, and there are a lot more fields, and there is a far greater possibility that the mistakes have been made somewhere, and that you can actually make some sort of an exploit there using an SQL injection method. However, if you can't create any sort of usernames or users or anything of a kind, you will actually need to attack the login page itself. In that case, I do not believe that you will need a session ID, although you can still get it. Now keep in mind that this is your browser that we're dealing with, and we can do with it whatever we want. Even though this website is somewhere in a remote site, we can do whatever we want with this browser in order to test the functionality, in order to conveniently capture the information that goes between us and the website in order to use it with the SQL map. For that, we need to use Burp Suite, as I've said. So go ahead and open up another terminal. Here, let me just zoom this in. Log in as root, of course, and type in Burp Suite. Press enter. If you're running it the first time around, you might be asked to accept a license agreement and to provide anonymous feedback. Whether you provide anonymous feedback or not, the choice is entirely yours, but you do need to agree to the terms of use. You do not, as I said, you don't actually need to provide any sort of feedback of whatsoever. They've just included that as an option, but you can disable it and it's fine. The program won't actually send anything in regards to you. Anyway, we have the Burp Suite running up. Go ahead and in the upper left corner, click on Proxy, click on Intercept. Actually, you can click on Options in the right, and make sure that 127.0.0.1 is selected. It will be selected by default. I've created some other things down below, but don't pay any attention to that. Go back to Intercept. Make sure that the Intercept is on and not off. Go ahead and minimize your terminals. Go back to your web browser. Click on Edit, Preferences, Advanced, Network, Settings. Click on Manual Proxy Configuration and make sure that you have these things typed in. So 127.0.0.1 port 8080. Use proxy server for all protocols. There we go. So those are pretty much the only settings that you need to type in. You need to type in the IP address of the loopback and the loopback IP address, and you need to write in the port number. The port number is 8080. Click OK. Close. Reload the site, and of course the site won't actually be able to reload until you let it through. So you can immediately see that the Burp Suite has managed to capture information here, and it is waiting for you to tell it what you want to do with it. So you can either forward it, you can drop it, and there are actions here. Send it to a lot of other functionalities in Burp Suite, but for the time being I want to copy the URL. So go ahead and click on Action, copy URL, open up your text editor, whichever one you want. Ah, come on, don't do this to me. I don't know, the Burp Suite has some sort of problems copying these things. Have no idea why. Oh, come on, don't. Let's see if it's gonna work like this. Excellent. So yeah, if it doesn't work the first time around, just try to do it again, and usually it will work. And if it doesn't work, try it again and again and a couple of times like that. So if it doesn't work after a couple of times, okay, there's some sort of a serious problem. If it does work, fantastic. Anyway, you see that the site is still spinning, nothing has happened. I can just click on forward and the site will load in the back. Intercept is still on, but we don't actually... Oh, yes we do. Okay, so I do apologize, I've actually forgot to take one more thing out of this. Let's just repeat the process. So you see, if you... Oh, come on. Reload the site. Excellent. So you see where it says cookie. It's a security high, Utma, blah blah blah, whatever. Some other things down below that not even God can read. And then you have PHP SESSID. Copy that. That is your cookie session ID. You will need it. So go ahead and copy it. Open up your text editor, and right below the URL, go ahead and type this cookie session ID. Excellent. So now you can feel free to close the Burp Suite. Are you sure you want to exit? Yes, I am sure. You can see when I shut down the proxy, since my browser is configured to go through a proxy, it's going to shut down immediately, and it's not going to be able to do anything. You will effectively render your browser unable to surf the web at all. You won't be able to use it to surf the web. So go ahead, back to settings, click on use system proxy settings, click on OK, close, try again, and there we go. It does work without any sort of problems. Now that we have taken some information, remember, all of this that you're doing on your own machine. The only thing that is remote here is this website. So you can configure your browser any way you like. We've simply used Burp Suite to extract certain information. We wanted the cookie session and we wanted the exact URL. Well, you could have gotten the URL from here, to be honest, but doesn't really matter. I wanted to get the cookie session ID. There are some other ways and other methods, but I decided to use this one in particular with the Burp Suite. And in the follow-up tutorial, we're gonna use the SQL map in order to try to do something here to see if we can find some vulnerabilities, to see if we can actually perform a scan and eventually extract some information. Until then, I bid you all farewell and wish you a ton load of luck with this. Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial. Today we're gonna just continue on as this is a follow-up tutorial. So without further ado, let me just show the modifications that I've made to the SQL map command. I have it here somewhere. Yep, there we go. So the address is pretty much the same as it was, except there is this bar thing at the end. It was in the address of the site. I've removed it. I have literally no idea why, but it's supposed to be there. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, in the cookie section, you will also need to make some modifications. So this is the cookie that we have previously used. I have closed and reopened the session since then, so it is likely that this has changed. But you will need to identify the cookie, so it's PHP SESSID. This is the type of cookie that we have picked up, so just type it in. And you can also specify the security level equals, and then you specify it here. Oops, it's low. Sorry, let me just change that quickly. Excellent, there we go. So I've been playing around with it, and I've been trying to see what happens with different sort of settings. And you see, just to confirm on the website, DVA security, it is on high. So you see the setting here is on high. However, you can, even though the setting is on high here, you can play around with these cookies And you can do this on any other site pretty much. You can also modify the cookies to get different sort of results. So instead, if it's high here, and even though the site is set to high, I can type in here low, and it's gonna go as low, no problems. Now this is not, as I said, this is not something that you can apply here and here alone. This can be applied pretty much anywhere. Open up your Burp Suite, take a look at the cookie section, and see what happens there. Try logging in and out of the website, wiping your cookies clean, wiping your browser history clean, and see, like, have 5 consecutive cookies and see what happens. Or log in through a different browser, or log in through a different virtual machine, and just have, or 5 or something like that, consecutive complete cookies, and then see how they change. If you can figure out their rates of change, and if you can figure out how they're assigned, well, there you go. You need nothing else pretty much. However, that is not really likely to happen unless somebody has some really bad cookie keys. Then you can do pretty much whatever you want. Let's just change this to high again. And if I already have it cached, I've done it several times, but if it doesn't work with high, leave the high setting on the website, but modify the cookie to low and trick it in such a fashion. I have a bad feeling it's going to pull it from cache, and it did pull it from cache. It doesn't really matter. Yours is just going to take a bit longer, maybe like 30 seconds more, something like that, and you'll probably be prompted with a question. Read through the question. It will offer, if it finds some vulnerabilities, it will stop and it will ask you, do you want to continue scanning even though I found vulnerabilities? You can say either no or yes, just type in N or Y. For the time being, if you wish to follow exactly through this tutorial, you can just answer with no, because we are focusing on a particular vulnerability and we're not expanding on it. But on your own, I would strongly recommend that you do keep on scanning and try out different stuff. And as I said, if it doesn't exactly work with high, just try modifying cookies to low and leave it on the site as high. Anyway, so we have some information here. We can go ahead and read through it. It says parameter ID get, type boolean, based blind, title, it says payloads. Excellent. So type union query. Okay, so this is definitely vulnerable, and all this information that tells you a bit about the vulnerability, and it confirms that it is vulnerable. But you still need to actually do something with it. You still need to try to extract information. By the way, your log files are here. You see this file that I'm selecting. Do not forget to type in the dot here, the one that I'm selecting now. So just type in /root .sqlmap/output/ and this is my current IP address, but you know, IP addresses vary from one web server to another, so just use the one that is written out here in order to access the logs. There will be all sorts of files there, but you can just go ahead and use the file named quite literally log, open it up and see what's written in it. Basically, you will have this here in it, no problems. Anyway, now that we've established that it is vulnerable, I have a few commands here that I have written out for myself. Yep, there we go. So let's just go ahead and clear the screen now. We know that it is vulnerable. We're going to use pretty much exactly the same syntax. However, we want to add a few things. So DBS. Let's see how this works out. Unable to retrieve the database names. Falling back to the current database. Fetching database name. Something wrong with the full union technique. Could not because of the limitation. Okay. Let's try tricking the website from high to low. And there we go. It's right there. So once again, you see I've just modified the cookies themselves. I haven't actually modified the site. If I go back to the site, if I click on security, it is on high. You see, this has not changed at all. I'll just go back to the SQL injection blind. Go ahead and open up the terminal. And it says here, available databases. So we have DVWA, information scheme, MySQL, preference scheme, and so on and so forth. Let me just, oops, there we go. So if we open up, if we just go back to our command, we can type in D for database, and now we can retrieve tables from individual databases. By the way, the DBS just lists the gives you the databases. Basically, it says available databases and the ones that you want to access, depending on what sort of information is contained where. You can't, of course, know, but it doesn't really hurt just to check them out. Sometimes there is a lot of them, and it can be a drag, but it doesn't matter. As soon as you get to this part, as soon as you manage to go through the first barrier and actually access the database remotely, you're there. Then it's just a matter of time, far less time, primarily because you are able to go through those databases and figure out what is where. Now, if somebody's keeping an active track of what is going on, and if somebody's monitoring this live, they will be able to see that there is an incoming connection. That can be problematic because they can kick you off, but so what? If you do this at some ridiculous hours of the morning, depending on in which time zone the database is, you can actually pull the databases, just download them, and then analyze them later. So you have all the time in the world to analyze them after you have pulled them, after you've pulled the information, and after you've seen. Then you can just sit back, relax, disconnect your machine, and risk-free, basically, just go through the files and see what is contained therein. Now I have immediately written here DVWA, but let's just go through some of the other ones as well. Let's see what's in there. SQL tables. Press enter. Is it going to pull? Yep, there we go. So this is a relatively excellent. So we have user, we have columns, privileges. This is for the SQL. Excellent. So we got a lot of tables here. Well, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do with this user. Probably there's bound to be something there. I mean, you can go ahead and check the others as well. But usually, if there's something that says user, password, or something of a kind, go and check it out. You can I personally would go through every single thing once I fetch the database, because you never know how somebody's going to name something, what sort of credentials are they, what sort of identification are they going to use. They might as well name this table user to, maybe not this particular one, but on the sites, on the web servers elsewhere, they can put their usernames and passwords in a database called, I don't know, Santa Claus, under a table called wooden door, pretty much. So once you have it, invest a little bit more time and go through these tables. Go through all the databases, go through all of their tables, and go through all the contents of the tables. Try to figure out, just try to see, even though some of it is encrypted, fine, okay, store it, maybe decrypt it later, but go through all of it, have a look at what is within those databases, because as I said, a lot of things can be just named differently, and you might skip it thinking it's nothing. Okay, so let's change it up, just change the paste a little bit. Let's say T for table, and let's say that I have one table user and -- column. Press enter. Let's see, what do we get? Do you want to use common column existence check? Sure, why not? Let's see what happens. Please enter the number of threads. This is a pretty small one, but the more threads you enter, the faster it's gonna go, but the risk of detection is higher, I guess. I don't know. Let's see if we can support 4 threads on this virtual machine. Apparently we can. I could have probably told it more, but it doesn't really matter. This is gonna run for a while, and then we're gonna see the contents of the table. Basically, we'll see the columns and we'll see what's actually written in them. Anyway, until I will pause the tutorial here, I will let it finish, and then we'll pick up where we left off in the follow-up tutorial. Until then, I bid you all farewell and wish you a lot of luck with this. Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial. Now this thing has finished. As you can see, it says no columns found. This can happen, perfectly legit thing to happen. Let's try something else. You see there is a table user, but there are no columns in it, so nothing has been placed within it, and that can be a pain, but oh well. It does happen from time to time. I deliberately left it here just so I can show it to you. Let's try a different one. Let's try the one that I know that there's useful stuff in. So dvwa --tables. Excellent. There we go. It immediately fetches it. Now keep in mind that I am doing this locally. So the web server is on the same machine from which the attack is being generated, and that gives me a speed advantage. That gives me a tremendous speed advantage. That enables me to do stuff really fast. However, if you are out there on the net and if you have a slow connection, if the database is far away, and even worse, if the connection is bad on the other end, this can take a while. So these things tend to take a good amount of time, and don't be surprised if it runs for a while, because that's just the reality that we have to accept and live with. Anyway, we got users, we got guest book, so let's have a look at users, because I know that there was something useful there, but you won't know. So go through all of them. If you're doing a genuine pen test, go through everything that you can get. Go through every single table, go through every single column, go through every single database, see what is in there. I cannot emphasize this enough. How many times did people suffer needlessly, primarily because they were just too lazy to go through the stuff that they already had. So let's just go ahead and type in -t users. And you cannot tabify anything here. You gotta type in everything pretty much manually, which is a drag, but that's the way it is. Press enter. Excellent. So there we go. This finished really fast. As I said, this is not going to be the case in the real world, or maybe it will, but it is very unlikely, primarily because of the speed limitations. Anyway, we got a column here. We have a type. Type tells us what sort of information is stored within this column. For example, int is a number, so an integer. That's the English word for it. Integer, a whole number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 0. I'm pretty sure that even yes, if you say unsigned, if it's by any chance it says unsigned int, then it doesn't have any negative numbers. But if it's just int, then it can be, I don't know, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Now 1.26 is not an integer, it is a floating point number. So if you have ints, basically it just means numbers, that's it. Varchar, I'm pretty sure that's just characters, strings, or some sort of strings are placed in there. I don't think it's any, it could be like complex strings, where you, sorry, not complex strings, just regular strings where you can have spaces. It could be C strings where you cannot have, where you have like every individual character, something like that, no spaces, whatever. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I would have to revise some of my programs because I'm not really good with theory, but I can make it work in practice. Anyway, soon enough you will see what is contained within those columns, and then you will be able to judge for yourselves. If I've made some mistakes here, please forgive me. So let's just go ahead and delete this and type in C user, and this is basically column so C for column, T for table, D for database. Really simple, plain English language. There isn't, I don't know, there aren't any complicated sets of commands that you need to type in here. For example, here the only thing that you need to pay attention at is the delimiter for cookies. So semicolon basically takes apart two types of cookies, and you specify it here, the cookie, and you specify it here, and just say equals, and this. So no big deal there. Mainly just equal signs, slashes, colons, semicolons, etc., dashes. But for arguments, when you're passing them when you're passing arguments to a program such as SQL map, usually those arguments will reflect what will reflect their purpose. So for example, you want to list columns. What are you going to do? Type in -C for columns. You want tables, -T for tables. Databases, -D for databases. Very simple. You don't need to invest much thought into it. It's plain simple English language there. And if I want more than one column, I can just type in comma and specify another one. It's pretty easy, so no big deal there. I can say password, and I'm gonna go ahead. Sure, let's take the first name and last name as well. First name and last name. Excellent. So these things can be pretty long, and you don't want to type all of them. So why not? Well, you don't have the screen for it, basically. If you have too many of these things, they will crowd your screen and you won't be able to see anything. You won't be able to make heads or tails out of it. So just take a smaller amount of them at a time, a smaller amount of columns at a time, like take 2, 3, maybe 4. Have a pretty big screen here, and let's see if it's gonna fit or not. Maybe. Okay, so shutting down, what happened here? Rejection. Total HTTP request resuming something prior to. Okay, I probably misspelled something. First name, last name. Okay, let's just take in user and password and then take first name and last name separately. Come on. What are you doing to me? Let's check the command out once more. Of course. I've been taking it all, but I didn't dump it anywhere. I'm a brilliant person, I gotta tell you that. Do you want to store hashes to a temporary file for eventual further processing with other tools? Now, what just happened to me, these things tend to happen to anyone, no matter at what level. So don't worry about it. Just don't lose your nerves over it. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to stay calm. If you can't stay calm, leave the machine as it is, lock it, go have a walk or something, or take a glass of water, a tea, whatever. Come back after 15 minutes, continue working. Believe me, you will figure out a solution far faster than just smashing against your keyboard or something of a kind. Anyway, it says 1337 hack me, and then we have some sort of a hash here. That's probably a password, depending on how we actually use this. So it says fetching columns user, first name, last name, password. What do we got here? Retrieve. I don't see first. There we go. So apparently these are admin, 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 Gordon. So this is the first name, this is the last name, and what on earth have I requested here? Let's just have a look. I'm skipping it again. Apparently this is the user. So that would be the user name, I'm guessing, but we will see this very shortly. But just by looking at this, you can conclude a lot. So I'm guessing this is the first name, this is the last name, this is the password, and this is the username. This is what you type in as a user. Yep, Gordon B, and this is Gordon, and then Brown, and then a hash. Yep, I do believe that I am correct. Next up, as I said, there is this question it's asking you, so you can store these hashes and then individually crack them, because you cannot use them as they are. You need to actually figure out a password from this, which is if the password is shorter, if it's some sort of a word from an English dictionary or something like that combined with some numbers or something of a kind, yes, sure, it can be cracked within a reasonable amount of time. If you have some sort of a password like me on my main machine, no, you're just not going to be able to crack it. It's going to be even if you were able to crack 8 million attempts per second, attempt to crack it 8 million times per second, it would take you more than far more than a decade, I can't calculate that. But usually that means that the password is longer than, I don't know, 8 characters, and that it has all sorts of things in it. I don't know, like numbers, signs, capital letters, lowercase letters, etc. And that can be problematic, especially if it's in the realm of 12 or 13. Then goodbye. You're not gonna be able to crack this hash. You're better off at attempting to do something else. But anyway, for this tutorial, we're going to try to crack it with a default dictionary that is here, but you can also implement other dictionaries, and you can use other tools as well to crack these hashes. You can implement customized dictionaries, you can implement custom ranges, and then generate passwords from those ranges to attempt to crack this, and stuff of a kind. So there are a good amount of options out there for you, but just a keynote, a reminder, you wouldn't believe, I mean, you literally would not believe the sort of passwords people use on their main servers, on their gateway routers, which are the entry points to their networks and the building or something like that. I don't know, I have seen passwords literally on a router which is used to exit onto the internet for a company. Username admin, password admin. How fascinating can that be? I don't know, people actually sometimes don't pay attention to these things, but there are a large amount of passwords out there which simply are not of any use. If you can get the hash, you will crack it for sure. So be positive, be optimistic as far as that part is concerned. But from time to time, you will encounter somebody that actually uses proper passwords, and you simply won't be able to do anything with a hash there, but there are always other methods, as I've said. Anyway, you can store them, but I don't want to store them. Let's give SQL Map a chance to actually crack them with a default dictionary. Yep, there is a dictionary-based attack, so you can type in yes. Default dictionary file. Okay, so it can use a default. You can specify a custom file. Custom dictionary file you can download from the net. Just type in dictionary files for password brute force or something like that. You can get them pretty much on a lot of places on the net. Try to find the ones that is most suited to your purpose. Generally type in your search queries on the net, type in what sort of a password are you trying to crack. Perhaps what type of a site is it, or something of a kind. You can also have file with a list of directory files, which is very interesting as well. So you can have a list of directory files within a file, and you can try multiple dictionaries from websites. The good thing with this is that you don't need necessarily store all the dictionaries on your computer, because they can be pretty large. You can store a couple, try them out, store a couple of, delete them, download a couple of others, try them out, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I'm just going to use the default one, which is press enter. Do you want common password suffixes? Slow? No, I don't want them. Let's see what you're going to do, how you're going to crack it. It says multi-processing hash cracking is currently not supported on this platform. I am on a virtual machine, so give me a break here. This is working as fast as it possibly can. It only has one processor core assigned to it if I didn't actually do anything. So you see, there is stuff happening here. It's doing some of the things. Do you want to crack them via dictionary-based attack? Okay, so I think this is asking me for my current username and password that I'm using. Sure, why not? You see, it says admin. That's what I've been using, and it says password, and it says that there's the hash for a password, and then there's the actual password. Last name, first name, user. That's it. And if we go back up, you can see that we have actually retrieved pretty much everything for other users on the site. So we have cracked this one, we have cracked this one, cracked this one, this one as well. And okay, I do admit this is generally not the type of passwords that people will use, but they will probably use something relatively similar. Maybe there will be a couple of numbers or something like that, which is nothing too difficult to crack, especially if it's a dictionary word or English name. That's gonna fly for sure. Anyway, now you can use these credentials to log into a website and basically obtain access. Especially if you can log in as admin, that's kind of ridiculous, but yeah. Anyway, what I want to say here is, I don't know, sometimes people have asked me, well, you have the hash, like why can't you do that? Why can't you just pass it as a password? Isn't it the same thing? No, not really, because the website on the other end, it takes this word as a password, it runs it through some sort of mathematical algorithm which converts it into this. It encrypts it in essence, and then it compares what it has encrypted here, and compares the encrypted form of this. So it compares the encrypted form of Charlie to the encryption which it stored on its own, within its own table somewhere on the disks, on the server disks somewhere. If you were to pass this in, this would get encrypted, and it wouldn't be the same as the encrypted version of Charlie. Definitely. So you can't actually pass this. There is a method called pass the hash for Windows password cracking, but that is a subject for another time. If you wish, feel free to take a look at it on the net. Anyway, I bid you farewell, and I hope to continue this in the follow-up tutorial. We'll see what we will do there. Until then, I bid you all farewell. Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial. Today I am going to open up a chapter on brute forcing methods, I would say. And these will include, here I will include how to crack hashes, how you can actually attack a website with a brute force, how you can perform a brute force attack on a website in order to try to guess the combination of usernames and passwords. But more importantly, you do need to know that there is a way to crack those hashes and how you can crack them. So basically I will go over a couple of tools. One of them will be Find My Hash, which is an online tool. Also another one which is extremely popular, it's called John the Ripper. And then we'll jump into Hydra, which actually enables you to attempt multiple usernames and passwords on a website, and in such a way brute force them. If it manages to guess them, you will log in, although it does require some rather painful parameters, so we'll see how that goes. It can be a drag with parameters sometimes, because you need to figure them out in a website, but usually everybody pretty much gets the hang of it. They try it a couple of times and eventually it works out. Fortunately for us, the very first tool that I'm going to try today is rather simple, plain text, plain tool, and it's called Find My Hash. Find My Hash -- help. You will see even the help menu doesn't have that many options, so these are examples, these are valid options. Look at this. So it only has 3 valid options. It says if your hash cannot be cracked, search it on Google and show all the results. Note, this option only works with -H, one hash input option. For files, you can have a file of hashes, so there are a few things to take into consideration when creating a file of different hashes. So it says one hash per line, nothing in between. So you type in one hash, you press enter, you copy paste the next one, press enter, and so on and so forth. And all of them have to be of the same type. Up above, straight in the beginning, you have types of hashes which are supported. So MD4, MD5, I don't know, Ghost, Shot, 512, and so on and so forth. So these are the ones that are supported. Any other, I'm afraid it's not going to work with this program. Here you have the general syntax, and the general syntax you can disregard this portion of the syntax. You don't need to type this in. You can just type in Find My Hash and then the rest. Let's just go down. Excellent. Clear the screen. Also, another thing to take into consideration, that you have a lot of websites out there which you can use to attempt to decrypt your stuff. here I'm using like md5lab.com, and I've issued it to, and I've requested that it decrypts a certain hash. The hash that I've actually asked it to decrypt is hey223 exclamation mark exclamation mark, and this is it. Now, it is highly unlikely that you will be able to decrypt this on your local computer, primarily because it contains 3 sets of you have letters, you have numbers, and then you have these signs as well, which is an exclamation mark. If it was hey223, it would probably break it, but with exclamation marks, it's going to be a bit more difficult. Anyway, I'm just going to Control C this. I want to save this to see if it actually manages to finish later, so I can show you. Hey223, and because you should always remember that you have a ton of resources out there on the net that you can utilize, and those machines are probably a lot faster than your local machines, as they are server machines. So if you can find something for free, great. If you can't, oh well. Anyway, let's go and type in find my hash. Oops. Find my hash. And we're going to say that it's going to be MD5, as this is a really common one. This is I do believe that this is the one used in the database that we've previously cracked. So if you extract hashes such as those from a database, you can crack them via this algorithm, in this fashion. So -h for hash, and now we need to go ahead and create a hash. I don't know, what are we going to type in here? Let's use something simple to begin with, and then later on we can use a more complex things. But I want to primarily use something simple now, so that it finishes in some reasonable amount of time, as opposed to having to wait for an hour or something like that. So let's just type in hey. That's quite simple, and we'll try. Let's just see if this one works out, and then we can try another one. I think this one should go relatively fast. And there we go, it is analyzing it with different things. We're going straight through. We can see the sites here as well. So it's going, and it's done. So the following hashes were cracked, and this is so weird that somebody was lazy to somebody actually didn't bother to put an if statement somewhere. But oh well, the tool is free, so my credits to the authors of the tool. But a single if statement could actually fix this. You wouldn't have, if you have a single hash, it should be written the following hash was cracked, and if you have multiple hashes, it can say the following hashes were cracked. Anyway, that really doesn't matter. It has no effect to the functioning of our tool, and you can see, surely enough, there's a hash here, and you can see the word that was hashed as well. So no big deal there. Let's try something a bit more complex. Is this done? No. It's probably not going to finish, but anyway, what the hell, I might as well try. 1, 2, 3. Let's try hey 1, 2, 3. So letters and numbers, and increased length as well. Paste, press enter, and it's going. This might take a bit longer. However, I just want to show you if it becomes too long before I actually finish what I have to say. If it continues after I said what I wanted to say, I'm gonna stop it. But no, apparently no. It's so a 6-character password, including numbers and digits, is cracked. Yeah, let's just try one more for the fun of it. So hey 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Let's leave 1, 2, 3. Let's just increase this to hey with capital letters, and let's add an exclamation mark. I purely doubt it. It's going to be able to crack this. Maybe because I've used hey and 1, 2, 3, but let's see. If it does crack it, I'm going to be amazed. Because just adding those strange characters that you generally don't see in passwords or usernames, like exclamation marks, asterisk signs, greater than, lesser than, etc., you really make it a lot more difficult for any sort of brute forcing software to actually crack it, primarily because Okay, so if you have letters and numbers, you have a certain amount of you have a fixed amount of characters. So it's a smaller number, and if you use characters, oh man, that increases the amount of possible combinations exponentially. Because I don't know, you have like you have 10 possible numbers, and then you have the English alphabet plus English alphabet. But if you have all these numbers and all these other signs like quotation marks, single quotation marks, double quotation marks, parentheses, brackets, curly brackets, percentages, ampersand signs, slashes, backslashes, pipes, yeah. The amount of combination is staggering, and yeah, it's unlikely to be cracked. Just like with this one that we're doing now, we are unable to crack it, even though it's fairly simple. It just has an exclamation mark here. But people, as I've said, generally in a significant amount of cases, definitely above 50%, do not use these sort of markations in their passwords, primarily because it's hard to remember. And a lot of people don't tend to log in these days into anything. They just stay logged in, or Firefox remembers their passwords, or Chrome, or whatever, and they don't want such passwords. I mean, this exclamation mark is not a general thing. Trust me. People generally don't put it. It would usually be, hey, 1, 2, 3, and that's gonna get cracked. But in any case, it looks like that it won't actually manage to crack it. If it does, I will let you guys know, but I purely doubt it that it will. Usually, I do believe that this is usually the last one that runs, but in any case, I want to bid you farewell, and in the next tutorial, we will actually use some other tools. I do believe it's going to be John the Ripper. Okay, so there we go. It wasn't actually cracked. Yeah, it can't actually crack this one, but let's see if we can do some Google searching with it. Up. No, don't. Let's see, how does the syntax for this one go? Again, you go for it. The hash wasn't found in any database. Maybe Google has an idea. Google doesn't have any results. So sorry. Okay. So yeah, you're not going to be able to crack this hash. But what you can do is basically copy it. This is one more thing that I've done here, but here's what you can do as well to duplicate the procedure. Just copy it here, and then see what Google has to say for real. So there's an md5decoder.org, and that seems to be the only site with this particular hash. And this is in some foreign language, but it doesn't really matter. Control F, hashes are universal in all languages. Apparently, nope, this is not where we need to be. But if you have a website like md5lab.com, you can copy paste it there. I can't copy paste it actually here now because there's this cracking process underway. But if you are using this site for the first time, you're gonna get a prompt here. Just copy paste the hash and click on decrypt. Maybe they will have more luck than you. Anyway, in the follow-up tutorial, as I said, we'll try out some other tools and see how our luck serves us there. Until then, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you there. Okay, so due to some reviews that I've gotten, I am not going to be drilling the hello everybody sentence anymore, or I will try not to do it anyway. But rather instead, I'm just gonna jump into the tutorial itself right away. So today we're gonna do something different from what we've done thus far. This is a common problem encountered by tech support people in companies, or forensics in the police, or something of a kind, or private companies as well. You generally get a machine if you work in the forensics, whether you are working for the police force or whether you are working for a private company that is a contractor for the police or something of a kind. You will inevitably encounter system passwords that you will need to bypass. that can be extremely problematic. For example, if somebody has encrypted their drives, it is with a strong enough encryption key, it is unlikely that you will ever manage to pull anything out of those drives. Now, we're not going to be dealing with the encrypted drives today, as that is pretty much impossible, or highly unlikely, I would say. Rather, instead, we will be dealing with system passwords. Now, usually what the forensics would do is insert a bootable CD or a USB and boot it from there. However, a lot of the systems, you get logged in by some default user. For example, my default user here is test. It doesn't have any root privileges of whatsoever, but I am able to actually do some basic operations on the system which do not require root access. Now, from this user mode, I want to acquire a root password so that I can actually control the system to the fullest of extents and see what is going on there. Now, I can't actually control the system from a bootable CD. Rather, instead, I can control that particular system which runs from a bootable CD and then access the files here. And this is also one of the methods that is very nice. You can extract password hashes and then crack them later on, or something of a kind. But today, what I wanted to show you, this particular method, is when people forget their passwords or something of a kind, you don't necessarily want to go into through the trouble of actually booting from a CD, then getting a hash, and then after you've gotten the hash, you then need to crack it, and so on and so forth. Rather, instead, I will show you a method where you can obtain root access without that by just rebooting the system and changing a few things there, and then afterwards we will use that method, or we will use the one with the CD to acquire the hash as well. And then I will show you how to crack that hash with John the Ripper. Anyway, without further ado, let's just go ahead and reboot the system. So I'm just logged in as test here. Let's just type in reboot. Oops, I do need to, I can just use the graphical interface to reboot the system. Or you can just physically turn the machine off and on. Oh, come on, where are you? Hibernate, restart. As I said, you can physically turn the machine on and off, and that's gonna qualify as a restart. So, okay, it is now in the process of booting. Grub is loading, and immediately after the grub loads, move the arrow up and down so that the timer actually stops. Go ahead and press. You see there are these options here. It says use up and down arrow keys to select which entry is highlighted, press enter to boot the selected OS, or E to edit those commands before booting. So what we want to do is press E, and there's a whole bunch of things here. It's kind of difficult to see. I can't make it any clearer for you, unfortunately. There is one line which is very clear where I am now. It says echo loading Linux 318 Kali AMD 64. I'm sure you see that one. Down below immediately there is Linux/boot VM Linus 318 something. And down below that line you have this number string. Well, it's the same line, I think. Let me just move the arrow. Come on. Excellent, there we go. So it's the same line, basically. It just can't fit into the screen. Maybe on your computer it will. So there is this long number. It says here 957-828 and so on and so forth. And after that line, immediately it says RO. Due to the background, it's a little bit difficult to see, but on your systems you will be able to see it with more clarity. But anyway, after this number, 957-82 something, there is a space, and then there is RO. Delete the RO, type in RW. Go to the end of that line, don't change anything else, go to the end, press space, type in init, INIT equals / bin, so bin / bash. So it's BASH. Excellent. So let's see how do we actually save this. Press Ctrl C or F10 to boot. F10. Where is the F10? Excellent. So I just pressed F10 and it's booting up now. Let's see what happens. Excellent, there we go. So I am prompted with a root shell. See, I am root on my system now. You can see in the left corner of the screen that I am root here. Of course, this would be in full screen mode, but you can't actually load VirtualBox guest editions while you are booting it like this, so the screen will be rather small. Anyway, it says root at none, but doesn't really matter. I can do whatever I want. I can go ahead and clear the screen. I can cd to root. As you see, I have full access to the system, and from here I can pretty much do anything. For example, I can do init/5. Come on, message file. Do you have startx? Nope, you do not have startx. Fantastic. I have config. No network configuration either, primarily because I am in this mode, which is fantastic, but it doesn't matter. I can do a lot of things to the system. For example, just to give you an example, here we go: cd home test us. So I am in the test, and now I can do pass wd, type in test, and I can change the password for test. I can even do pass wd for root, and I can change the password for root. Let's do that. So pass wd for root, what shall it be? The new password. I'm just gonna type in exactly the same one as I've typed in before, but you get the idea. You can type in whatever you want here. Excellent. So it says pass wd password updated successfully. Now what we want to do is reboot and do a regular boot. So we get the graphical user interface as well, and we get full screen here in VirtualBox, and we get a bit of a prettier environment as well. So just go ahead and reboot. You will of course need to undo the changes that have been done. Could not determine the run level. Doing soft reboot, it's better to use shutdown instead. Okay, so this approach comes with certain problems. Let's just power off the machine. You do not wish to power off as well. Amazing. As you can see, this does come with a few drawbacks. It is not as convenient, but oh well. Doesn't really matter. You can, what you would do on a physical machine then, if you don't want to bother yourself with figuring out what the problem is here, I of course have to go like this, and you'll probably have to do it like this on your virtualizer, which is probably VirtualBox, but I have seen that some people have been using VMware in the discussion section as they've had some problems with the VirtualBox. As I said, you can either try to figure out what is the problem here, and it says it's better to use shutdown instead of power off on the command line or something like that. You can try typing in some other commands, but honestly, why bother? Just press the reset button on your computer and let that be the end of it. So reset, it's booting up. Welcome to grub. Okay, so proceed to edit. Let's just go and, oh excellent, that has been deleted by default and it's a clean. So if you mess something up here, just reboot the machine and the cleanup operation will be done for you. Exit from here. I don't really want. Oh, come on, don't bug on me now. Never mind, we're just gonna reset it again. Not a good idea to do these sort of things in a VirtualBox. They tend to, or pretty much any virtualizer. Maybe on Xen it wouldn't be a problem, but they can present problems in a VirtualBox, primarily because it is not a physical machine. It doesn't work in not in exactly the same way. Anyway, I am rebooting it here, and we're gonna get into the system, and we will be root. So not yet, but now we know the password because we have changed it. Although this method does not enable you to actually get the password itself. Rather, instead, it allows you to only change it. But we obviously needed to do that because we need root password if we are to actually access the etc passwd and etc shadow file where the password is actually hashed. And let me just show you that. This is where Linux stores its password. you need to become root for this, and now we know the root password. So let's just type in, well, not nano, but even better, cat etc shadow. Excellent. So you see here it says test, which is my user, and then there is some sort of a hash over here that is not pretty to look at, but what can you really do about it? You can crack it, I suppose, but that's about it. And excellent. And here is the root is the first one, and then there's the hash here as well. Now we need to actually crack this. Let me just go ahead and clear the screen. In the follow-up tutorial, I'm gonna show you how you can actually extract this hash and how you can crack it. Now this particular tutorial, or these few tutorials, will be for a Linux type system, and then we'll move on in the next few tutorials to a Windows based system. But remember that we need to obtain root privileges on a system before, or admin privileges on a Windows system before we will be able to do these sort of things in order to extract the passwords themselves. Why should you do this? I mean, if you already have root access to the system, well, you might want to extract the system password primarily because people tend to repeat the passwords, and they might have used it elsewhere or something of a kind, or your contractor might just say, "Hey, I want the password. I don't necessarily want just root access, but rather instead I want the password for whatever reasons." As I said, people tend to distribute them over the other accounts or something of a kind, and then they can use it to log in elsewhere as well. In any case, I bid you farewell, and I hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial. Okay, so in this follow-up tutorial, we're going to be doing this same thing as we did before. However, we're going to do it on a Windows machine. And to be honest with you, most likely you will be doing this on Windows machines as opposed to Linux machines, primarily because even on rare occasions when Linux users do forget their passwords, and that is quite rare, primarily because they have to type it in over and over and over again to use various things, whereas on Windows it is not a default feature. It can be set up that way, but it is not by default that you need to type in your administrator password for things. Rather, instead you can just click yes and go through it, which is a bit stupid in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people out there. But oh well, there definitely is a feature where you can enable it, but I really think it should be enabled by default. Anyway, what I've seen people do lately is, and not lately, but they've been doing this for a while, they take passwords, they take hashed passwords of Windows, and then they crack them elsewhere. Once they have cracked them, they, depending on what sort of protocols have been set up on that machine, they are able to gain remote access or something of a kind. For example, in classrooms, in internet cafes, even though that you cannot really access that machine from the outside world, in a school facility or a corporate building or something of a kind, if you have the password of that machine, if you have the authentication credentials, if you manage to get on the same LAN, you can actually connect to that machine. Especially because you have a lot of shared folders, disks, and so on and so forth. That can be very problematic. The biggest danger of this happening is, well, you probably heard about support people misrepresenting themselves as technical support, but really the biggest danger are the employees themselves, and sometimes irresponsible behavior and sometimes deliberate actions, primarily as I said, in internet cafes, schools, and in corporate buildings. This can be pretty bad because I've seen people utilize like 100 or 200 school computers, and they become their bots. Basically, they control them from a central point, or as they have it these days, they have decentralized bots, and then those computers tend to do all sorts of things for them, which is really bad for that university because all traces, all clues will end up inevitably pointing towards them for whatever activity that person has conducted. And that is why it is not a good I mean, that is why this sort of an attack is useful. You will be able to recreate the steps of such people and steal the hashes, and then there are various applications for those hashes, what you can do, where you can apply them, how you can utilize them. I mean, it's beyond, I can't even hope to count them all here, but it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to give you a brief intro of what people actually use these hashes for on Windows machines. And they are also crackable, primarily because people for Windows, they don't put any sort of complex passwords most of the time, so they are crackable more or less. Anyway, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Open up your browser. I have Internet Explorer here. I've been trying it out lately, and they have remodeled it quite well, but I still don't like it security-wise. Anyway, as this is my virtual machine, I don't really have a lot of stuff installed here, so I just use the default Internet Explorer, and that's it. Anyway, you need to go to this website, www.openwall.com, and you can navigate to this link if you wish. If not, you can immediately type in this link, or you can actually navigate to it on the website. It's pretty simple. There aren't any problems. Anyway, you need to scroll down, and what you need, if you're where is it, come on, there we go. So it says pwdump7, and I want you to download that one. There's 6, there's 5, and so on and so, but you see 6 is Windows 2000, XP, 2003, Vista, and nothing further. pwdump5 is NT 2000, XP, and 2003, nothing further. That is why you do need pwdump7. There is a question mark after Vista. I'm pretty sure that's like for everything that came afterwards as well. And Quarks, pwdump something, I don't know what this is. Where is the new open source? Okay, I guess you can download the bottom ones as well, but it doesn't really matter. I've realized that pwdump7 actually does work without any sort of problems of whatsoever on Windows 8.1 Ultimate with all upgrades done. Okay, maybe not with all of them, but I think I didn't do my upgrades for this week or this half of the month or something like that. Anyway, it does work with Windows 8.1, so you don't have to worry about that. You just go ahead and click on download local copy of pwdump7, save as. It's gonna go ahead and save it into your downloads folder. Go ahead and click on save. I already have it. Do you want to replace it? Sure, why not? Running security scan. I wonder what sort of a security scan is Internet Explorer doing. Has completed. Excellent. So I need this is a zip file, so I need definitely something to open it. I would recommend using 7-zip, but I'm 99.99% sure that all of you out there have some sort of a zipping and unzipping software, whether it's the proprietary one or a free version like mine, which is 7-zip. I'm pretty sure that you all have it out there. That's why I'm not gonna include it in this tutorial, primarily because pretty much everybody has it. If somebody needs instructions on how to download and install 7-zip for unzipping files, just leave it in the discussions. I'll be more than happy to help you out there. Anyway, navigate over to your downloads folder. No, not here apparently. Yeah, right. Users, creator, and downloads. So got a lot of things here. Actually don't need to be here. I need to open up 7-zip. Sorry about that. Let me just go ahead and find it. 7-zip file manager. Excellent. So I have opened up my 7-zip, and you need to find pwdump7, and then you need to download John the Ripper as well. So just download John the Ripper 179 Windows binaries zip, and download one of the latest free versions. but go further down below where it says download the latest community enhanced version, and then download the latest one here. After that is done, go back to your, just click on that link and it will download. Go back to your extraction software. I'm using 7-zip. Find the file here wherever it may be. So it's pvdump 7-zip, and I need one more. I need john179j5w.zip. Excellent. Click on extract, and I don't need this folder. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my command line, and I have taken the liberty of actually reconfiguring the command line in Windows a bit for my own needs and purposes. I kind of like it this way, so just go ahead and navigate back to your root directory. The root directory here is actually C, just the drive. Unlike Linux, you will notice that the commands are slightly different, and I have no idea why does Microsoft actually use backslash instead of slash. That is so weird. I wish they would change it. That would make my life so much easier. Anyway, what I want you to do here is do dir for directory listing. You can actually use this command in Linux as well, dir, and it will list them. So I have created a file here. I think it's called pass. So just type in mk dir, like in Linux, space pass. I'm gonna name mine pass. You can name this folder whatever you want. This folder name can be anything. You can just smash the keyboard. There you go. And once you have the name of the folder, just press enter. For me it says a subdirectory file pass already exists, primarily because it does already exist. You can actually see it here, but doesn't matter for you, it will create it. And one more thing is necessary. I need to close this terminal. I completely forgot about this. You need to actually run as administrator on the terminal. Well, you don't need it for the creation of the folder, but you do need it for what we are about to do. Anyway, we are now at the extraction port. At the extraction, select path. Path will be local drive C. The folder that you have created, mine is pass, and just click OK. That will extract it there. That will extract both of the files there. You can see that I already have them extracted. Both are already there. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this, close this, doesn't matter. If you encounter any problems with file extraction, or if you need help on installing 7-zip for file extraction, you can use any other software that can unzip files, whether it's proprietary or free or open source. Well, maybe it can be proprietary and open source. In any case, if it's proprietary or free, doesn't really matter as long as it can do the job. Feel free to do it with that software. If you will fail to do this, just post it in the discussion section and I'll be more than happy to tell you how to unzip it. Anyway, let's just go back here. One more. Excellent. So we are back in C. Let's change directory to our newly created folder. Do dir for listing. I'm gonna have one extra folder here. It's pvdump3v2. Just disregard that. Those are my previous attempts to see and test out versions. Will they work or not? So they don't. pvdump7 works. Anyway, what we are about to do is actually dump the password file. So go ahead and enter pvdump. pvdump7. Excellent. So dir, just a few files here. There is an exe file. You need the exe file, so type in pv. I'm pretty sure that Windows is case insensitive, unlike Linux, but I'm just gonna play it safe here. And now I wish to create a file, same way as in Linux. I'm gonna name it test.txt. Press enter. Oops. What is it? Usage. Dump system passwords. Have you done that? Dir. No, you haven't. Why not? Why? What is the matter? Ah, okay. So here. Ah. No, this is not the case. Sure, this is dump system passwords. Why? Why not? Come on, don't do this to me. It's dump system passwords. Excellent. So it's like this. Oh, I see what the problem was. Of course, I need to redirect the standard output into a file. So you see a bit of a very stupid mistake on my part there. It took away some time, but it doesn't matter. I decided not to cut it out, just to show you that these things can happen. And I do have a tendency not to cut out my mistakes from the tutorials, just so that you can learn from them. Although there isn't much that you can learn from this other than to see that I can be rather stupid from time to time. Anyway, you do need a greater than sign in between these commands, because you want to dump the output of pwdump7.exe into test.txt, not .exe. If you don't do that, it's just going to print out these things out to the screen, and you can't really utilize them. They're just printed out there. It's standard output. Unless you have placed it in a file or something of a kind, it's completely useless to you. So press enter. This has happened. There, do I have a text.exe? No, fantastic. I have a test.txt, and if I type in notepad test.txt, press enter. There we go. We have pretty much the same information that that has been printed out on the standard output. Anyway, we're not really interested in looking at that file too closely, but one good thing is that you can actually get the usernames, which is fantastic. So all the usernames are here, and you can use them as you choose and please. All you need is passwords, but even once you have a username, you can even perform some sort of a brute force attack on an FTP or a mail server or whatever. I've showed you how to do that with Hydra on a web server. The procedure is pretty much the same for any other service. You just type in the parameters, just change the parameters a little bit, and that's it. Probably the most complex attack is on a web login service, on websites that have login services on them. Everything else, like attacking an FTP or an SSH or something like that, is piece of cake setup with Hydra, but depending on the password strength, can take a while. Anyway, let's just go ahead and close this file. Now I need to go back and go into... Actually, no, I'm going to do this the other way around. pwdump7 there, and now I'm going to need to type in back once. I'm going to go back once. That's going to send me into pass, and then I'm going to need to go into John and John again, and I need run. Sorry. Oh, come on, where is it? Direct. I just missed it. John.exe, and to this I am going to pass the file test.txt. Excellent. So we have loaded 2 password hashes with no different salts. Administrator, creator. Okay, so I need to actually expand this. Could not complete fast. Please report this problem. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. You can see everything that you need to see here. CLS, where, and shells, salts, port. Where is it? Come on, help me out here. Show. Okay, show equal. Okay, so I see. Of course, I need test.txt. I need dash dash show space, and I need to give it the file from which to read, of course. I can't just expect it to figure it out on its own. That was a bit stupid again on my part, but press enter and there you go. Now by default I can't select things here, which is very annoying. I need to go into edit and click on mark, and now I can select things. Amazing system. Anyway, it says administrator, no password, creator, test. So I have a password for my user creator, it's test. I have found it, and now I can use it for all sorts of generally wrong things. What you can use them for, and how to actually compromise, how to attempt to compromise systems, and what you can actually do, how you can exploit them, should I say. We will explore upon that further in the chapter on Metasploit and reverse shells. But for the time being, I just want to show you how you can acquire these passwords, how you can crack them, and later on we will actually utilize them. But this is a very useful skill to have to figure out how to get these passwords. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm going to go over a tool called Hydra. It will enable you to actually attack websites but login form, which actually have login forms. Most of them do have login forms. That's pretty much on all the websites today. You can log in somewhere on some portion of the site or something of a kind. Anyway, it is important to mention that this attack functions regardless whether the protocol is HTTPS or HTTP, because I'm going to be using Damn Vulnerable app. I'm going to be using HTTP, but it's going to work just fine on HTTPS, no problems. So regardless of the encryption, it's going to work. Don't worry about it. Anyway, what does Hydra do for us? How does it help us? Well, it simply enables us to try multiple login credentials over a period of time. So you can try out, I don't know, 20,000 usernames with 20,000 passwords, and so on and so forth. You get the general idea of this. Anyway, let me just go ahead and minimize this. Type in Hydra, and I'm gonna get a menu here for Hydra. Not a lot of things here. It might seem like a lot, but believe me, it is not. So you have the note from the author of Hydra. This is a bit of an interesting segment here. It says, please do not use in military or secret service organizations or for illegal purposes. And down below you have the syntax, and I know that the syntax, when you look at it like this, it can seem somewhat strange or difficult to comprehend, but believe me, it is not. It is rather simple, of that you can rest assured. All of these brackets and stuff like that can seem a bit complex, but we're going to go over those things, and by the end of this tutorial you will figure out most of these things. They're not complicated as they might seem in the syntax part. Down below you immediately see that the amount of options that Hydra has are not substantial. I mean, there's just a few of them here, not that many, so it's not that difficult. You have basically the ability to pass in with a lowercase l to pass in a single login username, or with a capital L to pass a file leading to a dictionary of usernames. You might wonder how to create these word lists, but you can find some of them on the net. However, it is in a lot of cases it is a lot better to actually create them yourselves, depending on the site that you are attacking. You want to be able to customize them, you want to adapt them to your own needs. For example, let's say that there is a company somewhere, and that company has a profile on LinkedIn or something like that, and it has a list of its employees there, or it has a list of, or you can at least find some of the employees that work for the company on LinkedIn there. So they would probably have something like standardized usernames for employee accounts. Basically what that means is that you either have first name dot last name, or first name space last name, or first name just last name, nothing in between. something of a kind. So you can get those first names and last names, and you can generate a dictionary from there into a file. To generate a dictionary basically means just put the things that you want to try out into a file, and that's it. So just put the names, usernames, put the names in there, and that's not a really big deal. You can also use Crunch if you wish in order to generate them by default. It's not that difficult. It's pretty simple, straightforward procedure. Anyway, down below you have lowercase p for password, so you can pass in a single password and then try it against multiple usernames. Not a bad idea, but can be bad, but primarily because there's a low probability of success. But if you have managed to gather some information, if you know something more, usually people use brute force when they've acquired at least some bits and portions of information that you can really acquire realistically by just browsing the web. You can also pass a password file, you can pass a username file and a password file, and that's gonna use combinations from both. Anyway, down below there is a very neat option. There's -C, and then you specify a file. Here where it says file, you just specify the path to that file. Same thing goes for here and here. Here, instead of login, you would just type in a login name, and here, instead of a pass, you would just type in the password that you wish to try, as opposed to writing a path to a file here. Anyway, -C space file, it's a colon separated thing, so you can type in a login username, and right next to a username you can type in a password. It says here, instead of -L and -P options. Now you might think, oh well, who's gonna make this tedious list or something like that, and sure, I can download it somewhere from the net, but why not just use them separately and see what I can get from there. Well, how about this? Now I have personally used this -C for routers. Now, for example, a company, well, not really a company, a small firm, they had like different routers within their buildings. Some were for wireless, and those were of one brand, and they had their main gateway, default gateway, which was the exit to the outer world, which was of a completely different brand. And then they had their interior routers for just from the main gateway, cable goes to this router, and then this router covers wirelessly this room, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. There was a whole spread. And then I used this -C to basically test out the default usernames and passwords for all those routers, just to see if any of those routers actually contains a default username or a default username password combination. Now, there aren't a lot of them, but different manufacturers, and I know you think, oh well, why do you need it? It's just admin, right? So you can just put in one entry. Well, no. Different manufacturers have different default credentials on their routers. Sure, a lot of the time, let's face it, it's just admin. But for some manufacturers, it can be UBNT for both username and password, I think. It can be root, and then for a password it can be TOOR, just reverse of root. And you have these variations that you can find on the net. You can just type in default router passwords and you can find all of them pretty much. So I just loaded up the list and attempted these. This saves you a lot of time. It doesn't raise that many it can raise flags because default credentials have been attempted, but it doesn't raise any flags in a sense that you're not making too many attempts. I mean, you're making a couple of attempts per router, moving on, a couple of attempts moving on, and so on and so forth. And with that, you can pretty much scan the entire network, whether it contains default credentials. If any of them contains default credentials, you have immediately found one weakness that you can write in your report. So that's a bit of an easy test, which saves you a lot of time. Anyway, down below, you can use this in combination with -C, and let me tell you something. Your routers, your home routers, usually get probed twice or thrice per a day by some IP address from God knows where, probing it for default credentials. Pretty much everyone's routers gets probed with this once. You can pass a file with a -m option, which is a list of servers to attack, basically a list of IP addresses. And people from different parts of the world, they tend to pass these files, and they pass every single IP on the planet. They basically mass scan the internet. They use Nmap to mass scan the internet, and then they load up live hosts with IP addresses to this file and what this file, and then pass this file to Hydra, which in turn attempts default login credentials. And if the default login credentials succeed, then they can be passed to different scripts that can do different things. So basically, people have been known to alter DNS settings on massive scales, because if you get maybe 1 million routers which have default credentials in their homes, and if you redirect all of their DNS requests to yourself, you can imagine the possibilities. I mean, you'll be able to do a lot. From redirecting all of their traffic to a certain site to basically exploiting them with some sort of basically zombifying them, making them bots or something of a kind. Options are countless there. It would be even pointless to start listing them. But anyway, that's what people do generally. If you check out the log files, usually they'll get probed once or twice, maybe thrice per day. Anyway, the best way to protect this is simply to change the default user credentials, and as soon as the script sees that that the default ones are not used, who cares? It's just going to move on. Also, different telecoms in different countries use different default credentials for different router brands. These default credentials are always public. Most of the time they're public, and you can actually find them out on the net. So in a certain country, there are default credentials for that particular internet service provider that it uses on its router. So just before you conduct any sort of brute force attack, don't just go all out and try to hammer your way. I'd rather instead do a bit of research, do a bit of footprinting. Try to figure out any additional information that can actually help you out. Anything is useful. Anything new that you learn is useful, and it can significantly lower the time of your brute force attack, and it can significantly reduce the possibility of a red flag. Down below, you have an option. It's T for tasks. Basically, this is the amount of threads that's going to run. Threads are processes which can run simultaneously or give an illusion of simultaneous operations. It says run tasks, number of connects in parallel. So per host default 16. So it's per one host, it's going to attempt 16 connections at relatively the same time. The differences are trivial, like nanoseconds, so it doesn't really matter. Pretty sure it's nanoseconds. It could be some other measurement, but doesn't matter. The difference between the timer execution, between the execution of the threads. Anyway, you can specify a different amount of threads depending on what your processor can handle and depending on how obvious do you want this attack to be, because if you issue a lot of them, somebody on the other side is going to see that there are a lot of connections coming in at pretty much the same time, so it's going to be obvious that there is something amiss. And you have -u, we're going to skip that for now. -help, it's a complete help, and okay, there are some other options down below, but for the time being, they're not that important. I would strongly advise you to check them out, as they also provide for different vectors of attack. For the time being, I want to show you how to attack a website login, and what I've told you now is specifically related to that purpose. Anyway, let's just go ahead and see how a Hydra command would look like. So you would just type in Hydra and then -L either for users or -L for a user. Actually, you have an example here. But look, this part is not difficult. So this you can do, this anybody can do, but that is not what we are here for to do. We need to get this part. This is for an FTP server, which is something we're not going to do today. You can see for FTP it's really simple. There isn't really that much logic to it. Rather, instead, we want to attack an HTTP website. Same procedure would apply for HTTPS if I'm not mistaken. It is going to work for HTTPS for sure. but I do believe that pretty much the same procedure applies. You just need to specify that it's HTTPS. Anyway, what we need is these field names. So we need a field name of username and we need a field name of password. So what we need to do is right click on the website, inspect element. Sorry, no, not inspect element. View page source. View selection. Come on, don't do this to me. View selection source. Excellent. Or most of the time you're going to see view page source. So you will need to be able to find username fields and password fields in order to actually do this, and you will also need the login submit button. Anyway, you can also do this with Burp Suite. I've showed you this in the previous tutorial in the SQL injections, where we've actually extracted a cookie. Using exactly the same procedure, you can also get these things as well. But in this tutorial, I wanted to show a bit of a different method, perhaps a bit easier method to actually figure these things out. But it's pretty easy here on the Damn Vulnerable app, primarily because you can get these individual sections and take a look at them like this. But if we, for example, open up any other website like Kali Docs, and let's see, view page source, you can see how a page source will look like. It's clumsy, it's long. I'm not saying that this code is clumsy, but it might appear like that, and it's pretty long, so yeah, it's gonna take a while you're gonna find it eventually, but it might take a while to actually figure out where is what. I would suggest using a Control F option and type in just user. Okay, this particular website doesn't have a login form, if I'm correct. Yep, it doesn't actually have a login form, but it doesn't matter. You just type in username and Control F or something of a kind, and then just sweep through the source of the website in order to find whatever it is that you are looking for. In this particular case, we are looking for the username and password forms. So go ahead and right click, view page source, and in our case view section source, because this allows you to see actually different sections separately. It's a lot easier that way. What we will need here is name, which will be username, and password for name. For the field, it's password. We will need these two. We will need the portion of the address, and we will also need the IP address of the server, which is ifconfig. Excellent. So this is the IP address of our server. How to find the IP address of that particular server, I've showed that in the previous tutorials. So those are the things that we're going to need in the follow-up tutorial, where we will actually conduct a brute forcing attack. I did take this time to actually explain all the options, because Hydra, it can be complicated from time to time, especially with this last section, past the username and past the password. You need to pass in additional parameters, which can get a little bit tricky. You will see soon why. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial. Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm just going to go ahead and start using Hydra immediately. You can see that I have like 100,000 things open down below, but you don't have to concern yourselves with all of them. Anyway, let me just zoom this in a little bit. There we go. Full screen, fantastic. Now, I have ran a command before, and I have it here. So let's just go over it, but before we do, a quick thing to do is just do a nano pass list. Excellent. So I've created a password list for myself here. Now, of course, this would be a pretty stupid thing to do if you were actually cracking a password somewhere on a website. Rather, instead, you should definitely download a password list from somewhere. There are plenty of them on the net. Just type in password list for dictionary attacks. You won't find a shortage of them. I guarantee it to you. But why should you do this then, what I did? Why didn't I just download it from the net? Well, Hydra is notorious for not doing what you intended it to do. I mean, the tool does function, the tool is properly coded, the code is fine, but because of the parameters that people tend to pass to it, especially for HTTP and HTTPS versions of attack, when you are attacking a website login form, it gets confused a lot in between what is a proper username and what are proper login credentials and what are not, because you need to provide a message to Hydra, what message that will basically, once it receives that message, it knows that the credentials are false, and every time it doesn't receive that message, it will assume that the credentials are correct. Hydra doesn't actually do anything else. And because of this, it can get confused a lot, and you do need to pass that long URL parameter for a login site. So there are some problems that can happen, and that is why it is good to create your own password list that is very short and to test out your attack. Test it out on your local web server, or test it out on the server that you wish to attack. But if you can log into that server with some sort of visitor or guest account or something like that, just create some nonsensical account with nonsensical information there. That would be great, and see if this attack works. Try out these passwords. If it finds the right password, great. And don't just run the test once. Run it like 2-4 times, not in a row preferably, but over the period of 2 days or something like that, or more. And if both tests find successful passwords, then you're good to go. Then you know that Hydra is functioning fine. What you do not want to do is load up a dictionary of 8 million passwords and like 10 million usernames and start your brute forcing attack over the period of a couple of weeks, just to find out in the end that you actually failed to pass right parameters. 2 weeks of wasted time. So just create a file like this. It's pretty simple. Type in nano and then space name of your file, just like I've typed in a second ago, and then you can type in whatever you want here. It doesn't really matter. Control O to save. Press enter for pass list. That's going to be the name of our pass list here. And Control X to exit. You can name it any way you like, quite literally. It doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and clear the screen there. Now what we need to do is find that command that I've used. Excellent. So it says Hydra and then -L for admin, space -P for pass list, capital P, the IP address of the server, the method. Okay, so there's a difference here. The previous one was get, this one is post. Reason for that: I'm actually attacking the front login site of the Damn Vulnerable app with Hydra. I have discovered some of the complications inside, so I didn't want to put you through it, as you would get a lot of errors and problems around it. And generally you will want, and that, to be quite honest, that is not a realistic scenario in the first place. Primarily because you've already logged into something, and then while you're logged into something, you want to brute force something behind, you want to brute force another login behind the login, which is, I don't know, there are, I suppose you can find such scenarios in the world, but it is not very likely that you will encounter that. Far more likely option to encounter is the one that we are seeing here before us, and this is far more realistic anyway. So I've already attempted to log in. It says login failed. If I reload the site, I'm going to burp suit, so I'm just going to forward this. Excellent. So we have this DVWA. We can copy this as I've showed you in the previous tutorial. The procedure is exactly the same. There are no differences here. But I just want to show you that you can also do this in burp suit in a very nice fashion. So you can go here into headers, and you can immediately see what you are requesting here. You will of course disregard the HTTP/1.1, sorry, not, yeah, 1.1 request. Rather, instead you will just copy this first part of this header. You got some hex here that's completely irrelevant to us, some parameters here anyway, but you also have it here. It says get, and then you have it here again in the same form, but you can actually copy paste it from here, while from headers I don't know, it's possible, but you have to like cut it and do stuff to it. Here you can just do this and then copy paste to wherever you want. Anyway, even though the method is get to call the website, we are yet to attempt a login. So if I forward this, Excellent. And now I'm going to attempt to log in. Where is it? Excellent. So you see here it's post. One of all, as soon as you don't see your credentials being passed in the URL space of your browser, it should be post if I'm not mistaken. If they are passed in the URL, it's get, but just try some random login, just smash against your keyboard, and you can also figure it out in Burp Suite. You can use the Burp Suite in the same way I've showed in the previous tutorials, and here you can figure out that it's post. But anyway, you don't actually need to use Burp Suite. I've showed you how you can get it from page source. Pretty much that is a universal rule for any site out there, and here you can see the username fields and password fields, etc. You can even get the session ID here, but all of that you can get through your browser. Also, one more thing to note is that the security is set on high. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and forward this, minimize this as I don't really need it, and come back into the Hydra command. So, http:/post-form space, and then I open up my quotation marks. We need to type in /dvwa-1.0.8/login php. Now there is a we've actually copied this part up till here, and then I've typed in a colon in order to separate the fields. The next field that I need to use is username. Do I still have it here? Ah, no. Okay, so it's just easier for me to look at it in Burp Suite now, but you can look at it wherever you like in Firefox as well. Just go ahead and forward that information, and let's go. Will this work? Tell me. Yep, there we go. Excellent. So here you see username equals. Again, you can do all of this the way I showed you in the previous tutorial, just extract information from page source, but it's a bit easier to see them in Burp Suite. Username equals, and then I would of course copy that part, and here you go. Surely enough, it says username equals. I've copied that part. Now this is the part that belongs to the website, and this part here belongs to Hydra. So you type in a $, user with capital letters, and then $, again to close it. So this part tells Hydra where to insert username, and this is the field name on the website, equals, and then Hydra will insert values there. &, password. Again, in Burp Suite you can see that it's actually &, and then password. Forget about this random value here. This is just a username that I basically smashed my fingers against the keyboard and attempted a login just to get this form here, and just to get this information here, which I can later on utilize, that I am utilizing now. So the next field is not the next field, but the extension of this field is basically &, password equals, and then we have it here again, &, password equals. We open up caret signs, basically like quotation, but I don't know, they just said okay, it's going to be caret signs, and in between them just type in pass, write it exactly as I've typed it in here. So for password it's always PASS, and for username it's user, basically just all capital letters. You are telling Hydra, but these field names, they can I suppose they can be changed depending on what the web developer has intended them to be, but it doesn't matter. I don't know, somewhere instead of a password you can say a PIN or something of a kind, but you do need to check that with a website in the source code of the website that you can view by right-click view source, or use a Burp Suite proxy as I've showed in the previous tutorials, and then you will be able to figure it out. Never mind. Excellent. So past the password, you have &, login. So let's just go to the Burp Suite and see what's up there. So it does really say that the extension of this field is &, login, and it equals login. It is so indeed, and we copy it and paste it here. There is no need to actually do any alterations there. Login will equal login. Hydra will not insert anything there. Now the third field that we need to pass, so this is one field, colon, colon. This is the second field, colon again here, and this will be a third field. Now the third field actually is the marker field, so that pretty much that is something that Hydra is looking for, and if it gets that, it knows that it knows that it's an invalid combination of a username and the passwords. If we just open up our browser back up again, it says here at the bottom of the page, login failed. So just try to find some message after you have typed in some random credentials, whatever, and press login. Find a message that basically says login failed. This login failed, I don't know, can be on any portion of this site, but it will be there. Don't worry about it. There is always a message when you fail to log in. So you just copy, paste that message here. If you okay, so obviously you can copy it from here, but you can also say view selection source, and then you got login failed there as well. I can't actually click on view page source here. It's still loading, some messing up with Burp Suite, I guess, but it does not really matter. This message won't be the same. It will vary from one site to the next, and its position will vary from one site to the next. And even if I had shown you the source code for this particular site, I mean, you can see it yourselves. It's going to be in one place, but just try opening up any other site and do a deliberate fail of login. Just type in some random credentials and then do right-click view source. You will see that you get a different message. It doesn't necessarily need to say login failed. You can just say failed or incorrect username and password or something of a kind. The messages will be different. There is no direct procedure to determine this other than just by saying reasoning. Just take a look at your screen and view the message, then view the source code and copy it from there. Anyway, quotation marks closed here, space, dash, capital V for verbose output. Why capital V? I think that's for extra verbose output, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's why I placed it there, but I'm pretty sure that the lowercase v would function just the same. Anyway, if I press enter now, this is gonna go and work, even though there are just a few. You see, it actually tries them all out because the amount of threads that it's running is 16. You can increase the amount of threads by adding a dash T space. I think it supports maximum 64 or 32 threads, I'm not sure. Also depends on your actual computer how much it can handle. Anyway, it says on port 80 HTTP post form host, and then it says login admin password is password. Now, it is always a good idea to do a lot of research prior to, as I've stated in the previous tutorial, prior to doing this, primarily because you won't necessarily have some sort of complex login credentials because they are rarely found anywhere, primarily because people don't bother with that. But you will want to know more about those login credentials. You will want to learn at least something before you attempt to do this sort of an attack, because if you know nothing, this sort of an attack can last for an eternity of time and you're most likely going to get discovered by the administrator. Also, I advise you to use this in combination with some sort of proxy or something of a kind. Also, a very nice thing to do is to go ahead and click on Applications, Kali Linux, Password Attacks, Online Attacks, Hydra-GTK. And here you have a graphical user interface for Hydra-GTK, for Hydra, just GTK for graphics. Here you can choose like single target, target list, specify a port. You can specify all these things via command line as well. You can specify a protocol here. Down here you can say SSL, use the SSL, be verbose, show attempts, debug, complete help after failure. And at the bottom of this screen that I'm spinning now, you can see that the actual command is down there. That command changes as you change values. So I'm going to say FTP, you can see it changed to FTP. I'm going to say HTTP proxy, and it's also changed, but you can't see the whole thing. Ah, come on. Yep, there we go. It says now HTTP proxy. The letters are pretty small here, but doesn't really matter. Just take a look at this graphical user interface tool if you're interested. All of these things you can do via command line. All of them. There's no difference there. You can specify a username, username list, password, use colon separated files, try login as password, try empty password, try reverse login. Pretty much self-explanatory things. Number of tasks. Here it's set by default to 16, but you can increase. You can also tell it to exit after first pair found per host if you're passing a file of multiple hosts, and you can say exit after first pair found on a global level. So if you find some login credentials for any of the hosts, just stop. Here you can specify a proxy to be used. Not a bad idea either. So it says specific. That where it says HTTP/HTTPS URL, there you would pass these parameters. There you would pass what is in the quotation marks here, something of a kind, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm just showing you if you're curious. So feel free to explore. And here it starts. So you say start, stop, save output, clear output. Clear output clears the screen, and save output saves it to a file. Self-explanatory as well. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that, as I said, if you are curious or something of a kind, but this is how you should use it. Use the command line tool via terminal. Always better to learn it this way, always better to use it this way, but I don't know. If you want to play around with the graphics as well, feel free to do so. I do encourage you to do both. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I urge you to experiment more with Hydra, try different parameters, try different places legally, and see how that works out for you, because this part will continuously change and it will be different from one website to the other. This part won't change, this part won't change, but everything else within the quotation marks will pretty much change from one website to the other. This part, this part is straightforward. As I said, there isn't that much thought that you need to invest here. It's fairly easy, but invest a lot of time into figuring this part out, and once that works out, the rest is easy. It's always going to work, no problems. Anyway, now I bid you farewell, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Okay, so once again we find ourselves here in Kali Linux, and today I'm going to do something a bit different with you. Today I'm going to actually perform a DOS attack, a demo of a DOS attack, should I say. Now, since we can't actually just go and DOS random sites, primarily because we don't have a permission to do so, and that's illegal, you do have an option, of course, to set up your own virtual environment, and then you can do whatever you want to it. Doesn't matter, it's yours. Or you can use a pre-existing web server which you can actually practice a DOS attack on. Now this pre-existing web server is actually your own home router. Your home routers, they do have web servers. You can access their interfaces via port 80. Pretty much all the ones that I know, unless it's disabled by default by your ISP provider or something of a kind. I don't know, but they usually leave the port 80 open, so the additional corrections and modifications can be made on demand. Anyway, you can if the router is yours, you can pretty much do whatever you want to it. And today I will actually use that particular web server on my home router, which I'm using for this pen testing exercise, in order to practice this sort of an attack on, to demonstrate it actually. Anyway, in the very beginning, I have spoken a little bit about DOS attacks. I've explained what DOS is and what DDoS is. But in addition to those two, you also have two subcategories for each of them. You have logical attacks and brute forcing attacks. Now, logic basically relies on logic errors on the other side, on the web server on the other side, and in a way it handles requests. So there were some problems with Apache where it just kept on stacking requests, incomplete requests, and waiting for responses on end. It was pretty easy to DOS that. That's like just keep on sending requests, and you didn't need a lot of bandwidth to crash a site. But that was back in the days. Today, they've fixed a lot of things, but you know, no system is perfect, and no matter how hard you try and how much you invest yourself and how much capital you invest into it, there will always be something to exploit. It's completely impossible to make the system foolproof against anything, against a DOS attack. Of course, the big companies like Google or Facebook or Twitter or something of a kind, their servers are simply too big to DOS you would literally require, I don't know how many machines and how much bandwidth in order to DOS it, which is pretty good because my Gmail account, I can always access it. It's always readily available and it never goes down. Fantastic way there. But if you do remember, I don't know when was it, like a year or two ago, uh, they actually managed to DOS a PayPal site, which is pretty bad. Not sure how they managed to do that. They probably did have a large amount of computers in the background, basically zombies, hijacked computers, which were generating a lot of requests, and then eventually the site went down. But don't hold my word to it. You can feel free to scream in the discussions that it wasn't so or something of a kind, because I'm not that familiar with the event. I just wanted to give an example. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you have sufficient bandwidth, either your own bandwidth or bandwidth combined with other machines, you will be able to perform meaningful DOS attacks on website, brute force attacks on websites. If you don't have enough bandwidth, brute forcing won't do you much good. I can see a question forming in the discussions, how much bandwidth would I need to do this or to do that? I really don't know. It depends on how much the server on the other side can handle. If you know how much the server on the other side can handle, then you can do estimates. How much speed does it have? How much bandwidth does it have? And then you can represent that in terms of amounts of requests. And then you can see how many requests can you generate to perform a meaningful DOS attack. For example, you don't need to. For example, I don't know. I've seen actually partial DOS attacks. For example, I don't know, let's just take a fictive example for this. A site can handle 10,000 users, and you can actually generate sufficient traffic to occupy bandwidth for 5,000 users. And if the site has average login users, I don't know, 6 or 7,000, that means that 1 to 2,000 users won't be able to access that site because of your DOS attack, while 5,000 will be able. So those are kind of a partial attacks. I'm not sure how useful that is, but feel free to check that out as well. What we want to achieve is a full DOS attack, have no doubt, today what we are doing is definitely a brute forcing method. This is not a logic. This is not a logic thing or something of a kind, although it can be interpreted as such. But we're just flooding it with requests in a very short amount of time. And since it's our own router here at home, we have the ability to send a ton load of requests in a very short amount of time with relative ease. Now, for this purpose today, you won't actually need to install anything. Rather, instead, we're going to be using a built-in, well, not a built-in tool, but rather instead a tool that comes pre-installed. It's called HPing3. It used to be called just HPing, but now it's HPing3. And let's just take a look at the help menu to see what sort of options do we have here. We will be using the SYN flag, so we'll be doing the SYN flood. You also have all these other things. Feel free to check these flags out. You can flood the server with all sorts of requests. That's one of the bright sides. That's one of the good things about this tool, that you can, okay, if one flood doesn't work, try another. If that one doesn't work, okay, try another. Something is bound to work. Not because the web servers are poorly built or something of a kind. Rather, instead, a lot of the time people just don't have the sufficient capital or something of a kind to invest into the security, because a security expert for a web server, somebody to fend off attacks and to tighten down security, that costs a lot of money. So yeah, not everybody is going to be willing to invest. And a lot of miner sites, unfortunately, I've seen it. It's pretty sad that competition is actually paying to, I don't know, take down their competitive site during Christmas or during some holidays or something of a kind. Yeah, that's definitely not a good thing. And I strongly urge everybody who is watching this tutorial, and I do recommend it and I do say it and so on and so forth, do not perform DOS attacks on websites you do not have permission to. You can get some serious fines for performing DOS attacks on websites that you are not allowed to tamper with. I know that I can get a bit tiring if I mention this from one tutorial in between tutorials or something like that. But believe me, it is important. I would hate for anybody to get into trouble or anything like that. Anyway, as I said, we are going to flood it with SYN flags. This is going to be a SYN flood. We're going to pass a SYN flag there. And up here we have the interval somewhere. Let me just see where it is. Excellent. So it's -I for interval. This is the format. So you just type in -I, then U, and then the amount of microseconds for that interval. How long will be that interval? You definitely want to, if it can be shorter, of course, sure, put it. See what can work, because I don't know, some servers will, if they see too many requests in too short of an interval, they will block you. But rest assured, you can route this through proxy chains, and if you route it through proxy chains or through a VPN or something like that, you can keep on rotating the IP addresses, so they continuously have to put bans on IP addresses, and that's not, they can't put permanent bans on IP addresses because that's not a very smart thing to do, as they will disable other people when those IP addresses are reassigned from accessing their site. Rather, instead, IP addresses will get locked out for a couple of days or something like that, and then you will need to change it or something of a kind. But if we just go down below, clear the screen, and there we go. So hping. There we go. Here is the time interval. Here is the SYN flag, and here you can here you can even tune the port, and then you type in the IP address. You do need the IP address. I have shown you all how you can get the IP addresses from domain names, and I've shown you all how to get a IP address of your default gateway. Just type in route. Let me just show it to you one more time, just in case. Route, and here you can get the IP address of your default gateway, which will be your router. That shouldn't be a problem to acquire. Anyway, go ahead and clear the screen. Go back to this command if you've typed it in. Excellent. So you have hping3 space -I space U100 space -S space -P, and then space and IP address. Very simple there. No complex things, nothing of a kind, although this does support some sort of regular expressions. And you can type in, you can combine this with bash scripts and type in something extremely complex here, which is not something you really need. The main thing you would really need is for it to jump from one IP address to another, or to flood different servers at a time. So for example, you're DOSing one server, I don't know, from 3 to 5, and then from 5 to 7 you're DOSing another server. So those are also some tricks that you can have. I decided not to show it here. You can find it online if you wish, how to switch it, but the reason why I didn't show it here, how to switch from one server to the other, it is highly unlikely. I mean, I cannot explain to you how unlikely is it that you will have enough bandwidth to actually perform this. And if you do need to switch from one server to, I mean, because these attacks, they don't work straight away. You do need to wait for a while for it to take effect. I will show this to you. Here, let me just open up my Windows machine, and I'm going to open up an Explorer. It doesn't really matter which browser you use. This is going to work universally. So 192.168.1.1. This is my router web server site. So it's prompting me to log in with my username and password. And if I say cancel, it's going to throw me here. It says protected object. The object on the ROM pager server is protected, and I can't access it. But it doesn't matter. I can't access the interior, but I can still access the site. It still prompts me for a login, which means that the site is functional. I can log in, no problems. There's no need to log in now, so I just won't. But it doesn't really matter. Your own home routers, feel free to log in and then perform a DOS attack. It's going to work in exactly the same way. Now I'm doing this in LAN, but this attack is, as I said, viable on the internet as well, over the internet as well, no problems. Now that we have proved that this site is functional, let's just continue. Let's just start the flood, and you can see the flood is in progress. The DOS attack is in progress, and if I go back to the Windows 8.1 machine, spoiler, this is still not going to work. So if I reload, it's going to prompt me for a username and password. We gotta wait. We gotta give it a minute or two or something of a kind for it to for the attack to actually take effect. Let me just open up Firefox on my physical machine as well. It's like 192.168.1.1. Excellent. So I am prompted with a username and a password here, and you can see even in our local area network, we still have to wait. Imagine if this was over the net or something of a kind, it would take way longer. You can see how fast the requests are being generated. It's just transmitting one after another, one after another, one after another. The intervals are ridiculously short, and it should start working any moment now. Let me just try refreshing the site. No, it doesn't. Okay, so I'm just gonna call the tutorial here. I'm gonna let it run for a while, and then I am gonna come back. I'm not gonna change anything. If I do, I will let you know. But all that I'm doing is cutting a tutorial here. I'm gonna let it run for a while, and then I'll come back just to show you that you can no longer access the site, that you can no longer get this error message, that you can no longer get the login, that you will no longer be able to log in or do anything of a kind. Okay, so it is already saying it's waiting, so let's just see, do I need to, yep, I do need to actually cut the tutorial, just not to bore you while this is running. Anyway, I'll see you in a couple of minutes, and then we'll see what happened. So here I am, well, not back in my virtual machine, to my physical machine, but my virtual machine is here. Let me just unlock it. I've allowed it to run for like 15-20 minutes, and I've realized what the problem was, why it didn't actually perform a DOS attack. It did, but take into consideration that this is a virtual machine and its resources are limited. So when I'm recording, my physical machine pretty much prevents this DOS attack while I'm recording, because I take up a lot of resources. And you can actually, let me just show you this here. Excellent. So you see that the VLC that I am using to record is using 222%, whilst VirtualBox is using 86. And when I am not recording, VirtualBox will usually be around 140 if I'm doing something serious or something of a kind. And just to show you, you see, it says I went to 192.168.1.1. It says problem loading page. So the connection was reset. You won't be able to actually access it. But since I am recording now and my resources are reallocated, if I reload this, you see there is still a problem with reloading. Am I connected? Oops, not that one. Let me just see if I am connected. So ping google.com. Oh, actually, I've allowed it to run for so long, I've blocked pretty much everything out, which is a bit awkward. Let me just go back to Kali and stop this. Come on. Anytime now. It says 63% packet loss. Okay, not bad, considering that I've pretty much overwhelmed it. So it was unable to load the site, but now I'm just gonna disconnect. And come on. Now reconnect. Please. Excellent, so you've managed to disconnect. And connect again. There we go. Let's try it again. Okay, so it is prompting me for a username and a password, so it does work. Look, basic logic behind what I did, what I can't actually show you directly now is, as I said before, while this attack is running, if I'm recording, there simply isn't enough resources on my computer to actually perform both, and physical machine will always be the priority. If you run this and you're not recording or doing anything else in the background, it will work. It will actually DOS your router. As you see, it says problem loading site. Because when I started recording, I saw that it loaded it, and when I stopped recording, I saw that it actually didn't load it. So there is a difference, because VLC for recording uses quite a bit of resources, especially CPU time. Anyway, this was one example. I strongly encourage you to try it out on your own. So you see, this is the command that I have used. It works on my router. See if it works on yours. You can also set up a server of your own if you wish, either on a Windows machine or a Linux machine or whatever. These things are absolutely free. If you need help there, please feel free to contact me in the discussions, post a question or something of a kind. I'll be more than happy to help you. One keynote that I would like to make at the end of this tutorial is that you shouldn't just message me directly, rather instead just post it in the discussion section, and there the discussion can continue and I can answer it as well, and other people can see what you have asked. So if they've encountered the same problem, they can see the possible solutions. They can say, for example, oh, I've tried this, that didn't work, and then I can immediately give them a third or fourth solution which is more likely to work. Anyway, as I said, try this attack. You'll see that it most likely will work depending on your router. I don't know if you have some sort of a Cisco router or Juniper router or something like that, high tech. Maybe it won't work, but since you're in LAN, I'm pretty sure that it will, primarily because you have a lot of bandwidth to flood it with. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial. Okay, so welcome to yet another tutorial on DOS attacks. And this time we're going to be combining two tools. We're going to use slowloris.pl. It's basically a Perl script. And we're going to be using Nmap to actually conduct a scan of a website in order to determine whether it's vulnerable or not. Now, this attack is not perfect by any means. The more bandwidth you have, the better, sure. The stronger computer you have, also the better, because you'll be able to make more threads. Threads means just more simultaneous tasks. However, sometimes, most of the time actually, if you don't have enough bandwidth, the site will not be permanently DOSed. So users will still be able to access it. However, their loading time will be like, pretty long, a minute or two. Try putting yourselves in such a position. Try thinking about a commercial site where they sell things, and imagine if all the clients logging into that server have to wait for a couple of minutes before that site actually loads. How many of you would actually stick around and wouldn't just go to pretty much a very similar site that sells pretty much the same things? That's just a fictive scenario and just trying to prove a point that you don't need to actually permanently bring the site down. You can just render it unusable in this fashion, where users' access time is extremely long, and basically that site becomes unusable. So whatever you're loading, it takes a minute or two, and it feels like you're, I don't know if everybody's going to remember those ISDN connections or something of a kind, where everything was extremely slow. Well, that's basically how that website would look like when you are performing this sort of an attack. Anyway, there are a few things which we need to do here, and one of those things is that we need to conduct a scan. So let's go and use our Nmap as we have used before. You see, I have the commands memorized here, as I have used these things before to test them out to see how it works out. So I have Nmap. I am telling Nmap to use a particular script for this purpose, parallels 400, and I am giving it an IP address that I wish to scan for this particular vulnerability. I've also issued double verbose output in order for Nmap to actually tell me what is going on, what it is doing. On Nmap website, let me just go ahead and do this. Excellent. So this is the site where you can find all the scripts. I have shown you this before in the previous tutorials that have labeled Nmap or something of a kind, where we've dwelt on the chapter of footprinting and seen how we can actually scan the servers for vulnerabilities. Remember how I told you that you can find the scripts here on their website? Well, you can also find categories and what every script does. I've also mentioned that as well. What we want is click on DOS, so denial of service. These particular scripts will scan for those particular vulnerabilities. They will scan for vulnerabilities related to DOS attacks. And we have, I don't know, broadcast Avahi DOS attempts to discover hosts in the local network. So we're not really that interested in local networks at the moment. I've dwelt a lot with that on wireless and how you can actually perform a DOS attack there. We want this one, HTTP slow LoRa's web server for tests web server for vulnerability to the slow LoRa's DOS attack by launching that particular type of an attack. There are also other ones. Feel free to actually try them out on your own systems and see how that works out for you. What different types of attacks will actually work for you. Anyway, we want this one for web servers, and in order to be able to DOS a website or something of a kind. So I'm just going to go ahead and use it here. You see script HTTP slow LoRa's. Press enter and let the scan run its course. Now the scan can take quite a bit of your time. Why? I don't know. It's in LAN. It should be a bit faster, but apparently it's not. Over internet, it's bound to be slower than this, so don't just think it doesn't work or something of a kind. It does work, but you know, if you're doing this online, it might take a while longer. In LAN, I really thought it was faster, but apparently this is the speed at which it progresses. Anyway, you have all the standard stuff that you would usually have, and down below it says completed SYN stealth scan. Excellent. So that's just the normal stuff. Down below you have NSC script scanning. Only after it has conducted its regular scan does it begin the NSC script scan, the script which we have actually passed and the script which we want to utilize in order to figure out is the server actually vulnerable to this type of an attack. You have a separate timer for the NSC script and a separate percentage done for the NSC script as well. So it says here the current time, and this is the remaining time. I'm sorry, this is not the current time. This is estimated time to completion, something of a kind. It doesn't matter. You don't have to pay attention to this. This is the important part. It says 2 minutes and 41 seconds remaining, 1 minute and 51 seconds remaining. It's going to keep on issuing them until its task is done. Once that is done, we will know whether the server is vulnerable or not. These routers, they tend to be vulnerable, to a ton load of things. I've had a bit of an awkward experience. Just goes to show that you should never really move away from your computer while it's unlocked. My friends, they took my IP address, and because the home routers are not really that good in terms of protection, so they were DOSing me basically. Of course, I can avoid it quite easily by just changing the IP address, turning the router on and off. Pretty much will do the trick. There are other ways, but I couldn't figure. For about 5-10 minutes, I couldn't really figure out what was going on. I didn't figure it out anyway, because one of the first things that people do when something is wrong with their internet connection, they reset the router. That's what I did, and of course the IP address changed, so the DOS attack stopped. Only later on did they actually tell me that they were messing around with me a little bit. Anyway, the scan has completed. It says probably vulnerable. So let's see what we can do. You can go ahead and clear the screen here, unless you have like 100 clients or more than one client here that you have scanned. Then you want to redirect this to a file, as I have showed previously. So go ahead and clear the screen. In the follow-up tutorial, sorry for the cough, something just got into my throat. But in the follow-up tutorial, we will actually go ahead and download the Perl script and see how we can actually utilize it in order to actually perform this attack. Until then, I bid you farewell.